This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know that one friend who always finds the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach? How do they do that? Well, Smart Travel is like that friend, but in podcast form. They cover all things travel finance, like which travel cards earn their keep and which are just heavy, shiny metal, and planning group trips that won't ruin your budget or your friendships. So travel smarter and spend less. That's the key with help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts. Armchair Explorer is a part of the Voyescape podcast network. Check out all of their shows from around the world at voyescape.com.
I jumped in and, the surge is going crazy. There's huge swell and you're floating in what looks like an ocean of stars, because each bite that the sharks take, there's an explosion of fish scales, like scales literally raining down through their gills. And, after a couple of minutes, the bait ball has entirely been eaten and you're just floating in what looks like a galaxy of stars.
Hi guys, welcome to the Armchair Explorer. My name's Aaron Miller, I'm a travel writer, and today we are diving into the deep blue with an incredible writer and underwater adventurer, Pier Nirandara. And whether you're an avid diver or you prefer to stick to the sands, I think you're going to like this one because the ocean is another world and we're going to see it through the eyes of one of its greatest explorers. Are you ready? Let's go. Pier Nirandara has achieved a lot. She's a best-selling author, an award-winning photographer, an expedition leader, a Hollywood film producer, and just a really nice person to boot. And her photographs, oh my God, are they amazing. I really couldn't believe my eyes when I first saw them. So please go and check those out. Her website is piernirandara.com. That's PIERNIRANDARA.com, or just search her up, and her Instagram is @PiersGreatPerhaps. I'll include her info in the show notes too, as always, so please do go and connect with her. You won't be disappointed. A quick favor from me too. This show grows by people like you helping to spread the word. We are building a community of people who love adventure and want to help spread our message of love for the outdoors, living life to the full, and experiencing the pure joy of this amazing planet of ours. If that sounds like you, and maybe you have a friend or two that you think would like this show too, then please let them know. Post about it, whatever you can do. It makes a huge difference and is a great way to support the show. Please also connect with us on socials. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Armchair Explorer Podcast. But for now, let's get on with the story. Pier's passion for sharing the ocean's stories with the world has led her to remote caves, sunken shipwrecks, dazzling tropical beaches, and storming shark-infested waters. And we're going to hear about that in just a minute. But it all began when she was a child, standing on a beach, waving to her mother.
I was very fortunate in the fact that I grew up in Thailand and I spent my childhood foraging around on the beaches. My mom would teach me about the various, shellfish and the shrimp that lived in the sands and all these different, just like a very idyllic childhood in that sense. And so that love for the ocean has always been there. It's always permeated my existence. But I have this very, very vivid memory of being, I must have been like 5 or 6 years old, really young. And we were on this island in Thailand, and my mother went to do a discover scuba dive is what they call it, right? It's when you don't have a certification, you're just kind of doing like a test dive. And I was too young to join. So I was waiting on the beach for her. And when she came out of the ocean, she had the biggest smile on her face. And she was like, oh my God, it was magic. And I don't think I've ever felt that jealous before in my entire life. Like, I was just like, I can't believe I didn't get to go. I'm going to get older so quickly. I'm going to get to dive. And then lo and behold, by the time I was, 8 or whatever, I did the bubble maker course, which is the one you do in the pool for PADI. And that's the youngest you can be. So I started with that. breathed underwater for the first time, felt like a mermaid. All my dreams came true. And then got my certification a couple years later and just was hooked ever since.
Pier spent years dreaming of dolphins and mermaids, imagining what it was like to live under the sea. And when she finally made it under the waves, those stories began to take shape. In fact, Pier is actually still Thailand's youngest published English writing author. At just 15 years old, she released the first novel of her children's fantasy trilogy, The Mermaid Apprentices. It was a huge success and became a springboard for what was sure to be a truly glittering career.
My high school life was basically doing book tours, writing children's books, but ultimately felt like I kind of hit the ceiling in a way. So went to college in Boston and then fell into the film industry out in LA and had a very incredible career working as a producer and also representing book to film rights at an agency. I worked at Sony, the studio, just did really cool work. It was very lucky and was rising rapidly and had this kind of career path carved out for me, but was feeling a very deep sense of ennui and just kind of, restlessness, but wondering, there must be something else out there. So I booked this trip to go diving on what's known as the Sardine Run. It's essentially the largest underwater migration on Earth. So every single year, these shoals of fish, the sardines, migrate up the coast of South Africa, and with them come the predators that hunt them. So think whales, sharks, dolphins, birds, just a ton of pelagic species hunting these fish.
The Sardine Run is astonishing in scale. In fact, it is estimated that in terms of biomass, it rivals even the wildebeest migration in Africa. And that is the largest animal migration in the world. Shoals can reach up to 9 miles long. The activity in the water is so immense that it can be seen from an airplane. The sardines travel in groups of thousands at a time to guard against the many predators that follow them. But those predators are smart and they herd the fish into smaller concentrated groups called bait balls to make them easier to catch. It is a feeding frenzy, and witnessing these bait balls firsthand is one of the greatest marine spectacles on the planet.
It's on one of the most beautiful and also historic places in South Africa called the Wild Coast. So to get there, you have to fly down to South Africa first, and then you have to take a smaller plane, like a puddle jumper plane. Then you have to drive down these pothole-ridden paths to get to this very remote destination that very few tourists go to. And then I spent a week diving the Sardine Run, essentially on this rubber dinghy, riding up and down the coast in crazy conditions. Because by the way, it's South African winter, so there's huge swell. It's very cold, and I have this memory of being on this boat for days on end. We're looking for the diving birds and signal the bait balls, and we finally find one. And the boat drives up to the edge of them, and the South African guide yells, "Jump!" And I look over to the side, and there's this must have been 2 or 3 meter long shark that's right next to the boat that's just chowing down on this bait ball. And I look back at the guide and I'm "Right now?" And he looks back at me and goes, "Is this what you paid for?" And I was okay, he's kind of right. So I just swallowed the fear that I had and I jumped in.
The water around her was boiling and frothing with the hunt. Large grey shadows appeared one after another in an endless parade of the sea's top predators. In that moment between jumping off the raft and hitting the water, she was frozen with terror. But then she landed, went under the waves, and everything changed.
You're floating in what looks like an ocean of stars, because each bite that the sharks take, there's an explosion of fish scales, scales literally raining down through their gills. It's hypnotic. I mean, it looks like these fish moving as a singular organism. I could stare at bait balls for hours. And then you have in the middle of that, in the Sardine Run, a shark plowing through that's disrupting, and suddenly a feeding frenzy occurring. Meanwhile, you have these gannets, birds diving down from the surface, shooting underwater missiles, and the thuds that you hear as they hit the water drop even more sharks. Around you, you hear the clicks of dolphins, common dolphins that are just going crazy and hunting. You can get seals, you can get orcas, you can get mola mola, you can get pretty much like any kind of predator feeding on the sardine run. And they don't care about you at all. They're just there for the fish. So as long as you don't float into the bait ball, you're theoretically safe. And, after a couple of minutes, the bait ball has entirely been eaten, and you're just floating in what looks like a galaxy of stars.
And those stars changed her. The restlessness and emptiness she had been running from floated away on the ocean currents, along with those galaxies of silver scales.
After that trip, my whole idea of the life that I had planned for myself was just completely ruined. So I went back to LA and pretty much almost immediately quit my job and strapped on a backpack and went solo traveling across, basically for like 6 months straight. Went to 20 countries across 5 continents, but primarily spent time in Southern Africa. And this was all by myself with like a backpack, trying to challenge notions of what it means to be a young Asian woman trying to go on the road. My mom was not pleased with that, but she kind of knew she couldn't stop me. I was always a very good Asian daughter, I think, in the sense, I just got good grades, went to good school, got a really good job, kind of was doing what was expected, not just from family or cultural expectations, but also for myself. So it required kind of embracing the unknown. And in scuba diving, we have this phrase, right? The giant stride. You stand at the edge of the boat, you have your gear on, you take a giant stride into the unknown. And I like to say that that's the philosophy I wanted to embrace in my life as well, is to kind of cede control. And there's this phrase also I love that's, everything works if you unplug it for a while, including yourself. So that's kind of what I did, was I chose to unplug from the rat race, from this very demanding career path, and just hit the road for a while and do this little mini sabbatical or mini journey. And it was, in hindsight, one of the best things I could have ever done for myself. But in the moment, completely and utterly terrifying. It was more scary to me than jumping in with sharks, I think.
But like jumping in with sharks, her decision to take that giant stride brought her closer to the life she had dreamed of since she was a child. She began to see the world through an entirely different lens, and no matter where she went, the ocean kept calling to her. And then she had another experience that changed her life.
Basically, it was this huge algae bloom in Cape Town at night, and one of my friends down there, who is the co-founder of See the Bigger Picture Foundation, an organization that gets kids off the streets into the water and discovering freediving. So he's the one who took me to this place, and we spent the entire night trying to capture the bioluminescence, trying to film it. He was swishing his hand around, trying to light up the bioluminescence, and I was trying to film, and it's impossible. And after a while, I remember just kind of giving up and putting my camera down, looking up from the viewfinder, and hearing just these elated cries from the kids around me, the local kids who had just come flocking to the water and were just having the time of their lives. They were rushing through the water, looked like they had, they looked like comets. They were trailing bioluminescence behind them. And I was like, this is absolutely marvelous. This is so, so magical, and you can't capture that. And so that really taught me about kind of the beauty of impermanence, and it brought me back a lot to, I grew up technically Buddhist in Thailand, but I don't practice, and it really brought me back to certain things that I had learned in childhood, and certain beliefs that, oh wow, the beauty in things is because they're transient, because they don't last forever, and so the whole essence of it is just to enjoy the moment. I think your heart's also a lot more open when you're abroad, and I hope to bring some of that open-minded curiosity and childlike wonder back into everyday life. I think that's also really important, of looking at the place around you with the same sense of wide-eyed wonder that you would at a place abroad.
After trekking across 5 continents, she returned home to California and asked herself the inevitable question: now what? Her answer came to her almost immediately. More of this. Pier quit her high-flying career and dedicated her life to the ocean. Now she regularly leads dive and snorkel expeditions to the far reaches of the world, from the pristine blue waters of French Polynesia to the rugged Pacific coastlines of Costa Rica and more. But one of her favorite trips, and it's as mind-blowing and amazing as the sardine run, occurs every year just off the coast of the Baja Peninsula in Mexico.
The Marlin Run is one of my favorite expeditions of the year, the Mobula Ray aggregation. I've seen some incredible wildlife in Mexico, and the marlins are so fast. They almost look like soldiers when they're hunting in formation, and they're just like so rapid in their movements that they can be in a split second right in front of you, snatching a sardine from like right in front of your eyes. You get pelicans there that are feeding that you can photograph. They've had orcas, humpback whales are migrating through the area. You could also see we've had aggregations of like thousands of mobula rays, like so many mobula rays just like in this vortex, like swirling around. It's pretty wild. They look like an ocean of bats almost. And this last trip we went on to see the mobula aggregation this year, we saw, it must have been dozens of them jumping, like leaping out of the air. It was incredible. It looked like sea pancakes, just like flapping up and down, leaping into the air in a whole row, and just seeing these massive vortex of the mobula rays. They will literally follow you for the entire dive. They enjoy your bubbles. They really like to like come and get tickled by your bubbles. So they'll come over and just hover above you. And we've had manta rays follow us for the entire dive up all the way through our safety stop to the surface.
If the sardine run is all frenetic energy and spectacle, this is more of a meditation, like watching a giant flock of graceful birds flying in slow motion, and then slowly, as they accept you, soaring with them. But while Pier loved the whip-fast marlins and the flapping tornadoes of mobula rays, her most memorable wildlife encounter on that marlin run was with something much, much bigger.
One of these years that I went on the marlin run, we jumped into the water. We were looking for marlins, and we end up getting a blue whale, which was just the most unreal experience. We were very far offshore, so like we weren't even, I think it was like technically almost like international waters at that point, and we were so far off. We had no idea there was going to be a blue whale there. We were like looking for bait balls. And so jumped in, came out of the water, and I could hear my friend like screaming through her snorkel, just like, ah! We come up and we yell to the guy like, Ballena azul, like blue whale. And it was a very, very curious juvenile blue whale that literally like came up to check us out. Like we didn't swim after it, nothing. I literally just dropped in and it came up to the boat. It was a really, really wild encounter and completely on the whale's terms.
Blue whales are the largest animal that has ever existed on this planet, reaching 80 feet or more in length and weighing roughly 150 tons, the equivalent of more than 30 African elephants. Seeing a blue whale in the wild is incredibly rare. Diving with one is even more so. Before whaling decimated their population, it is thought there were more than 250,000 blue whales cruising the seas. Now, only between 10 and 25,000 remain. They are a true leviathan of the deep, but they are gentle, sentient, and highly intelligent too. And you can see that. You can actually see that in their eyes.
You know, I just wrapped up an expedition to French Polynesia where we led 2 weeks of whale swims in this remote island there. And we must have been almost every single day, we had a mom and a calf encounter because, you know, the humpback whales are migrating up from the colder waters of Antarctica to come and calve, nurse, you know, give birth, all the things in the warm Pacific Ocean. And so they're just hanging around these islands and you can jump in, very, very milk drunk, curious calf, swimming up to you. They're still trying to figure out their buoyancy. They're not really sure yet what you are. They're very clumsy and they're just kind of flapping about and doing their thing and looking at you with such a profound curiosity. And when you have an animal that is also curious and will come up to you and wants to like interact, like it looks at you, you make eye contact, there's something that just pulls at your core that is so indescribable. And it really shows you kind of like you start thinking a lot more about the impact you have on the environment and on these animals that live. Like if I ever had a time machine, the place I'd want to go to the most would be like the ocean, you know, decades ago, and just see how alive it was back in the era of Cousteau.
Ocean plastics have tripled since Cousteau's time. Ocean noise, which affects all marine life, has increased by a factor of 10. Global warming, coral bleaching, overfishing, beaches are littered with man-made debris. Climate change has crept into even the deepest waters. The issues seem insurmountable. And though the solutions are complex and hard and fraught with obstacles on all sides, part of the solution, perhaps, begins with something quite simple. It begins with jumping in.
Paul Nicklin and Christina Mittermeier, who are, two of the most renowned underwater photographers and conservationists out there, they talk about breaking down the walls of apathy. And so for me, like when I lead these expeditions or these trips underwater, bring people underwater, the goal is if you have an incredible kind of just transcendent encounter in the water, or especially with an animal, like a whale, for example, right? You swim with this amazing, it's like being on safari, but underwater, and you get to almost interact with these animals. It breaks down these walls of apathy. It's impossible to come out of the water and not care about the well-being of these animals, of oh, look what we're doing in the ocean. I've had encounters where I'm swimming and I see this beautiful shark and it has a hook dangling off of the side of its jaw, or, seals with plastic around their necks, or turtles that are kind of looking at plastic bags and thinking they might be jellyfish. Or there's just these encounters where you realize kind of the impact we're actually having on the environment. And it's impossible not to care once you've had those experiences. So that's kind of what I hope to share with people, and having people have these personal encounters so that they can also come up and be like, what can I do better to kind of help out?
The ocean is special. It's where all life comes from, and where we come from too. And though it is another world, a world we have not even begun to fully explore, we know more about the surface of Mars than we do the ocean floor. There is something in that deep blue that calls to us, and that song can be heard clearest when we break down the walls of apathy, take that giant stride, and jump right in.
I remember doing a dive in the Maldives quite early on and feeling like I was floating through Finding Nemo, like that kind of magical landscape. You're essentially an astronaut, right? There are these quotes comparing diving like being exploring through space, and I felt like that was very accurate for me. And just having that sense of childlike wonder, I think that a lot of us, myself included, sometimes we lose sight of that the older we get. And it's one space in the world where quiet actually still exists. The world is still silent. You have a dive buddy, but your buddy generally can't talk to you. They're also silent. And so it's very meditative. And on land, I'm quite, high energy and running around all the time. And the ocean is like the one space where I get to retreat and be still for a moment and be present. And, when you think of breathing on SCUBA, it's very meditative. Taking these long breaths, calming yourself down, controlling your buoyancy. And so it's a very sacred place to me.
Thank you, Pier. Thank you so much for taking us on your adventures and sharing these incredible stories with us. I'm definitely wishing I didn't live in a landlocked state at this moment, but that's okay because I follow Pier on Instagram, and her beautiful photos inspire me every day to get out there on my next ocean adventure, which I hope is going to be very, very soon. So I highly recommend following her too. Her Instagram is @PiersGreatPerhaps, and her website is piernirandara.com. So until next time, keep on swimming, take that giant stride into the unknown, and dare to jump into stormy waters, because you never know what wonders are waiting below the surface. And the more we look for those wonders, the more the wonder of the world becomes a part of who we are. Dare to be truly alive. This episode was produced by Armchair Productions. Find our other shows at armchair-productions.com. Jenny Allison co-produced the show with me, and Charles Tyree did the audio editing and sound design. I'm Aaron Miller. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Pauline Fromer, host of the Fromer's Travel Podcast. We post new episodes weekly, detailing the kinds of money-saving tips and cultural insights that will make your trips richer without making you significantly poorer. We do so by interviewing real travel experts like TV host Samantha Brown, Frommer's authors from around the globe, and such public figures as Free Solo's Alex Honnold. It's a fun travel party. I hope you can join us.
Hi, I'm Mike Siegel, host of the Travel Tales podcast, and I'm a stand-up comedian who's been touring the world for years. And when I'm not traveling for work, I'm traveling for fun. And when I'm not traveling at all, I'm talking with friends, influencers, expats, and other people from all walks of life about the thing I'm most passionate about, travel. So if you want to hear a fun conversation about travel and maybe even learn a few things along the way, check out the Travel Tales podcast with Mike Siegel, wherever you get your podcasts.
Close your eyes for a second. You're not at home, you're somewhere else, and you can hear it. This is the Winging It Travel podcast, and I'm James Hammond, recording my travels as they happen, capturing real moments, real places, and the sounds that make each journey unforgettable. From immersive soundscape episodes to conversations with locals and travelers.
My name is Dichinam, and this is Buddhist Nuns College, so I'm in 6th year.
This podcast is about travel as it actually feels, and not how it's sold. If you crave honest stories, unplanned moments, and adventures beyond the guidebook, put your headphones on and let's wing it. Search for Winging It Travel Podcast on any podcast app.